Welcome to 100 Yards of Football. If you like the video, please come in and share it today. I surely appreciate it here at 100 Yards of Football. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. I want to give special thanks to my producer, Mr. Jeremiah Long, for making this happen this morning. Well, everybody knows this month is Black History Month. And when you look at this great game in the NFL, the Super Bowl ended last weekend with Kansas City defeating the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35, the Kansas City Chiefs. But we always look at how this great game in the National Football League was developed. And it was developed back in the 1930s. And then the 40s and 50s, the game grew to levels that we never thought of. The great players that played this game, especially from the African-American standpoint. But there's one guy, one player that I don't never hear getting mentioned in the NFL for making a tremendous impact. His name is Kenny Washington. And people looking at me today saying, what is Vincent Turner talking about Kenny Washington? Well, Kenny Washington was the first African-American football player to sign a contract to play in the National Football League, March 21st, 1946. But Kenny Washington's journey to the National Football League and putting himself out there is an unbelievable story. Kenny Washington, a gentleman, was born August the 31st, 1918, and he died June 21st, 1971. He was born in Los Angeles, California, and he attended UCLA. But the thing when I look at Kenny Washington's story is back in 1939, he was an All-American at UCLA. A school, when you think about UCLA, let's be real, we think about basketball. We think about all the great players that played there. Lou Alcindor, Bill Walton, Sidney Wicks, Curtis Rowe, Mike Warren. Then we think on the football side, Mel Farr Jr., Kenny Easley, Matt Darby, James Washington, Jerry Robinson. Outstanding football players, Freeman McNeil, Gaston Green, who lives in the Atlanta area at this present time. See, before all them and for all that greatness that happened to that school out there in the City of Angels, this young man, Kenny Washington, was the man. In 1939, he ended up leading the nation in total offense. An African-American, leading the nation in total offense, averaging almost 9 yards a play. But this is what's so amazing. His teammate at UCLA was Jackie Robinson, who's the pioneer that integrated Major League Baseball. A year before, Mr. Washington did it, March 21st, 1946. But the thing when I think about Kenny Washington's story, listen to me real closely. They say that Branch Rickey, the GM of the Brooklyn Dodgers, wanted Kenny Washington over Jackie Robinson because Kenny Washington was a better baseball player. Both Mr. Robinson and Mr. Washington were two-sport athletes at UCLA. But the thing I like about Kenny Washington's journey and his skill set before I get into his journey, at that time in 1939 at UCLA, skill set, he was elusive as a football player, A+, competitive, A+, the power, A+, the leg drive, A+, the breakaway speed, A+. And I'm going to get to a point when I bring up about the breakaway speed, the balance, A+, the hands, A+, the blocking, A+ for Mr. Kenny Washington. But what really brings me to a story, he finished UCLA in 1939. He played in a college all-star game that year in 1939, played for George Halas of the Chicago Bears, who at the time was the most powerful owner in the National Football League. And George Halas wants to sign him at that time. But however, all the other owners. We talking about the late 1930s, early 40s said, no way that we're going to have an African-American football player coming to our league. So you know what Mr. Washington did? He ended up going and playing for a minor league team called the Hollywood Breakers, a Pacific Coast League. And it took 7 years for Kenny Washington to get into the National Football League. And the only reason that happened was that the Cleveland Rams at that time decided to move to LA in 1946. And they decided to move into the LA Coliseum. So the people there, the owner of the Rams decided, we got a local star, Kenny Washington, and he was an outstanding football player at UCLA. We better sign this young man because you know what? It's going to bring money, revenue. So Kenny Washington became the first African-American to sign in the National Football League. March 21st, one more time, 1946. And what he did, he opened a floodgate of the African-American football player playing in the National Football League. After him, May 7th of 1946, his teammate Woody Strode decided to join the LA Rams. Then that August, Bill Willis and Marilyn Motley decided to sign with the Cleveland Browns in the American Football League Conference under Paul Brown. Both Mr. Willis and Mr. Mobley are in the Hall of Fame. But think about that impact. The first African American to sign in the National Football League. But the things that Mr. Washington overcame, not only being blackballed and not being signed once he came out of UCLA, but see, when God is in your plan, he always have certain people that's going to carry that torch for you. A lot of people didn't know that Mr. Washington had a disease called rickets. That's a disease that develops in young children at an age where you have weak bones and your knees hurt. You follow me here? Think about the guy that set the tone for the National Football League for all these great African-American players that played in the league. He became an athlete with that type of disease, rickets. Then when he finally signed with the Rams, he only played 3 years because of serious knee injuries he had. He retired in 1949. But people don't know this. You know, the Los Angeles Rams just won the Super Bowl year before last. Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. They've had some great running backs in that organization from Eric Dickerson, Willie Ellison. But don't you know he still owns the longest touchdown run in Los Angeles Rams history of 92 yards. And one thing that I'm really, really proud of when I look at Mr. Kenny Washington, after still holding that record since the 40s in the Los Angeles Rams organization, is that the day he played his last game, it was 1948. Look at the time now. We talking about Los Angeles, California was a little more progressive out there. 80,000 people got on their feet and gave him a standing ovation. His last game. A guy who waited 7 years. A guy who was an All-American at UCLA. And we talk about Jackie Robinson, but let's be real here. A better baseball player. But he made his bones on the football field. God doesn't make no mistakes. And when I think about this great game of football, I was born in 1960, July 17th. And I got up loving this game. Got up watching great players play it. From O.J. Simpson to Jimmy Brown to Emmitt Smith to Walter Payton to Lynn Barney to Robert Bazile to Earl Campbell, to Lawrence Taylor, to Hugh Green, Brian Ingram at the University of Tennessee, Reggie White, University of Tennessee, Philadelphia Eagles, Warren Sapp. So many great players. Kevin Johnson, I'm blessed here. Randy Moss, the great Jerry Rice, so many. But I don't never hear nobody from a media outlet mention Kenny Washington. No disrespect. I understand we mentioned Eddie Robinson. I understand we mentioned John Merritt. I understand we mentioned Joe Gilliam. I understand we mentioned Doug Williams. But this is the guy on the screen that got it started. And I see all these podcasts. I see all these platforms. I see here nationally. And we in Black History Month, and nobody mentioned Kenny Washington, the first African American that signed with a professional football team. I'm going to say it one more time. I don't care if you get tired of it. March 21st, 1946. This gentleman was special. He was special. And I don't have to paint the picture to let you see and imagine what he went through to get into that league 7 years after he finished his career at UCLA. But he got there and the floodgates flooded with all these great players from the African-American community. Let me throw Deacon Jones in there. Let me throw L.C. Greenwood. Let me throw Donnie Shell. Let me throw Ed Too Tall Jones. Tony Dorsett. Herschel Walker. Lindsey Scott. Harold Jackson. Unbelievable list. Terry Metcalf. Eric Metcalf. This gentleman right here set the stage for why this game is at the highest level and why I love this game. I like to say, if you like the video, please come in and share it this morning. Special thanks to my producer, Mr. Jeremiah Long. I wouldn't be where I'm at without this young man. Special thanks to people part of 100 Yards Football, Mr. Bobby Butler. Thank you. Two-time All-American in Florida State. First-round draft choice of the Atlanta Falcons, 1981. Thank you to a gentleman that really put a lot of work in here and got us to where we needed. Many blessings to him, to Mr. Logan Landers. To my man, Mr. Ronnie Keebler, BK, Brooklyn, New York, and Mr. Mark Denham. We know him, a.k.a. Mr. Mark Bass, Lufkin, Texas. And to my homeboy here from the Metro Atlanta area, North Atlanta High School, Mr. Donnell Scott. I want to say thank you to all these gentlemen, because 100 Yards Football would not be without y'all gentlemen. Y'all support, y'all love for me, and making me a better person here in this moment of Black History Month, and honoring this great legend here, Mr. Kenny Washington. My final words about Kenny Washington here on 100 Yards of Football. You know, when I was growing up, my mother, and let's turn her back in my hometown of the 911 Memphis, Tennessee, we had a turntable. And one of her favorite songs was a gentleman who was actually born in Nashville, Tennessee. His name was Edwin Starr. He died in 2003 at the age of 61. But he had this single called War. Huh. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. War. All you tremendous football players that's played at a high level, African-American players, when you wake up in the morning, you got a platform or you play this game, you should pay homage to Kenny Washington, UCLA Bruins, the City of Angels, California, hey. Y'all have a blessed day. I'm Vincent Turner here on 100 Yards of Football.